With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, today on the occasion of our inauguration ceremony, a distinguished invitee who has enriched our gathering with his presence is our guest of honor, Mr. Razik Zarook, who is the chairman of the Insurance Regulatory Commission of Sri Lanka. We now have the privilege of listening to the esteemed thoughts of our guest of honor on this occasion. So with that being said, we'd now like to invite him on stage. Let's put our hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for Mr. Razik Zarook.
Distinguished Chief Guest, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, Governor of the Central Bank, the President of the IRCSL, Chandana Aludgaba, the members of his team who organized this important seminar, or rather the summit, I would say, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I congratulate the team that put this up and thought of this, because it is timely, and I hope this will be the first of a series of annual conferences or summits that you may have hereafter. The Sri Lanka, in fact, is a very ideal destination, apart from its own attractions, which you saw, is also an ideal place to see how we have got over challenges and our own resilience. We are a country which had over 450 years of colonial dominance, the Portuguese, the Dutch, and the English. And thereafter, we had 76 years ago, we had in 1948 our independence. And since independence, we have struggled. Unfortunately, our expectations and our initial strengths we had during the early independence years were dissipated over the subsequent years. We were one of the best countries in Asia, second perhaps to Japan, and our per capita income exceeded that of Singapore. Singapore had a per capita income in 1965, much later, of $500 US, whereas today Their per capita income is 85,000 US dollars, where we are stagnating at 5,000 or no 4,000 US dollars. So you see how much we have missed. And why did we miss it? When you go back in history, we find that we are a country that was showered, I won't say cursed, showered with a number of external forces. In 1953, or 52 perhaps, for raising the price of rice by 50 cents, from 25 cents to 75 cents, we had riots. They called it the Hartal. A number of people died. The Prime Minister had to resign, and a new Prime Minister came in. And in 56, the government changed, and it was a socialist government, which went on a spree of nationalization, with it the tolerance of strikes, language-oriented riots, hartals, and then he faced a coup in 62, another coup in 66, which was supposed to be the toilet coup, which was nothing much. We had then a plethora of nationalizations. One of the victims of nationalization was the insurance industry. All the insurance industries were taken over by the government, and there was a monolithic single insurance, which is known as the Ceylon Insurance Corporation then. So that it was a Hobson's choice for the customer. It was much later that there was an offshoot, or perhaps it's much better to call it an offshot than an offshoot, of the insurance corporation called the National Insurance Corporation, which was supposed to promote competition. On the contrary, it was Paul and Peter. So it didn't matter whether you go to Paul or to Peter. So in that scenario, and beyond that, we also had a large number of environmental issues. Apart from the riots, we had floods, cyclones, earth slips, tsunamis, and of course, insurrections, and to cap it all, a 30-year war. And lo and behold, when in 1980s, early 80s, 81 and 82 perhaps, when insurance was liberalized by a government which believed in open economy, and to the end of the war by say about 2009, 2010, in spite of all the turmoil in the country, we had almost about 25 insurance companies, and today it stands at 29. So that was the growth of insurance amidst turmoil and amidst all the natural disasters. Then, of course, we had the COVID recently. Together with that, the economic downturn. Prior to COVID, we were optimistic. So we thought reduction of taxes will bring in more investments. Value-added taxes were reduced, and everybody expected the economy, that would be a stimulus to the economy to grow. Unfortunately, it did not. And the COVID was only a factor that added to our woes. We could not, and the COVID gave us the double whammy or whatever you may call it, when our incomes, from foreign remittances, exports, and tourism failed, we are unable to meet the commitments which we had borrowed over the years to develop our infrastructure, highways, and other connected areas. So as a result, soon after the COVID, we ended up in a financial crisis. A crisis which led to the declaration of bankruptcy. It shed shudders around us, and not only us, even our foreign partners and collaborators. However, it was a miracle of things that we managed it. Inasmuch as today, Bangladesh has brought down Dr. Yunus to come and advise them as to how to get over their crisis, we too had to search for our Dr. Yunus, and we found that Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, who had retired from the central bank, was in the golf course in Australia in active retirement when he was invited to come down and to assume responsibility to resurrect the fallen economy. I'm thankful to him, and I'm thankful as a nation we are thankful to him, because he came down and took over the responsibility, accepted the challenge. Perhaps his experience being a director at the IMF, and the fact that he is also, like me from my hometown, the South, we have the grit and determination to face any challenges. So he, along with, gathered around himself an excellent team of economists, one former governor of the central bank, Dr. Indrajit Kumaraswamy, I believe, and many others who were distinguished academics, economists who have served in various international organizations, and then put forth a process of rehabilitation or reform. And lo and behold, within 2 years of having gone to the IMF or asking for aid from or help from our neighbors, the country has been now put on an excellent growth path. From the nadir of things, we are now going up, trying to reach the zenith. From negative growth, from practically reaching triple-figure inflation, exponential currency devaluations, we have come down today to single-digit inflation, stabilization of the currency, and we have built our external resources to healthy conditions. And that we must congratulate not only the political leadership, but the technocrats led by Dr. Veerasinghe, who called upon the challenge. We are supposed to be a miracle nation. We achieved this in 2 years. What Greece has failed, Venezuela has failed, Argentina had failed. So, the commendable resilience of the country and its recovery will go down in history, and the resumption of economic activities and the gradual easing of monetary policy and structural reforms and the correct adoption of macroeconomic policies has enabled us to survive and come through this. We are now faced with a different challenge. The global economic outlook, the post-COVID global economic setbacks, and the downturn. We are, in as much as we have come down on inflation and tightening monetary policies, withdrawal of physical stimulus, globally and extreme weather conditions, the reorientation of the global supply chain, tax hikes, elevated prices has strained the industry. But I must congratulate the insurance industry, which we regulate. We were quite alert. We were concerned as to how the industry will perform in this atmosphere, in this rather environment. But I think the earlier challenges that we faced over the last year, the war, the cyclones, the COVID, etc., gave strength to the industry. I believe they have a quite experienced and they knew how to do. So they were quite familiar to navigate with commendable resilience and adaptability. They met an array of challenges and continued to operate under those challenging conditions. They were adopting innovative strategies, agile responses to succeed among adversity. But most of all, the industry also responded to the evolving market dynamics. To their credit, there was no erosion on the gross written, or the GWPs, or the gross written profits, or whatever, or their assets, or as well as their PBT, or the profit before tax. So I congratulate the industry. It's well done. I believe if one looks at the topic that is given, it speaks, there's a very key word there, the dynamics, the economic dynamics. That took my mind back to the principles of physics. I thought of Sir Isaac Newton, the man who wrote the laws of dynamics, the laws of motion, where dynamics plays a role. And there, particularly his second law of motion, which is more important than anything else, where he said the rate of change of momentum is directly proportional to the external force acting upon, and that is the most important thing, the external force acting upon you. If you consider your organization as a solid mass, and if momentum means mass into velocity, and the velocity of growth and the change of momentum in that growth would certainly depend on the external forces acting upon it. So you have to be very, very wary of what these external forces are. And when one looks at it, you can identify them as you all know perhaps, most of your the top management here, and even you as managers would know this. The first would be volatility. The unpredictable change in markets to which one has to respond by risk management. Dynamic pricing and investment strategies to mitigate impact. Then you get, having found that volatility, having met volatility head on, then you go into uncertainty. The inability to predict the future. It can be an economic downturn, a political instability, or catastrophes. So how do you do that? You have to have advanced data analytics with you, scenario planning, and above all, reinsurance to buffer. Talking about reinsurance, I'm glad that a number of reinsurers are here today, because we as regulators had enormous problems when you were reluctant to reinsure or grant any concessions to the industry during the troubled times. So I console myself and I tell the industry, don't worry, they're following what you do and what the banks do. You distribute a lot of umbrellas as compliments. And you normally do that when there is sunshine. And you take the umbrella away when it rains. So I told them, don't worry, we'll get over it. But with our improved financial positions, dollars coming in, we managed to pay you and win back your confidence, I hope. But we will remember you for the good you did, and worst of all, for the worst you did, and for the bad you did. So, these are some things which cannot be erased from our minds. So apart from the uncertainty, we have to come into the question of complexity. The volatility, then comes the uncertainty and the complexity. The variable influence of market due to technological advances, to which you have to navigate and simplify complexities. And above all, last, certainly the ambiguity for which I think we should also be responsible as regulators. Sometimes the lack of clarity and inability to interact or interpret events and trend, the unclear regulations which we are conscious of, and above all, cyber threats. So, evolving customer expectations, wherein you need to be flexible and adopt innovative, agile methodologies, and to offer appropriate and relevant products and services as needed by the customer. So it is very important that you narrow the gap of what you offer and the expectations of the customer. There's a big gap, and that gap has to be narrowed. You have to look into the need of the customer, the client, rather than the greed. It's the need and the greed. So this will, if you do not look into the needs and go for greed, it will relate into many lapsations. And the way to mitigate lapsations is to look into the need of the customer. You're doing a great community service. Remember, insurance is a fantastic community service where each stands for all and all stands for each. Do not forget that in insurance, Those who live long pay for those who die early. And those who are able pay for the disabled. So you are only a facilitator to that community need. So, in an increasingly individualistic world, it is necessary to agree to be a part of mutualization. And that is decreasing, and that should be arrested. So, ladies and gentlemen, what is the way forward? The way forward is the industry should shed its legacy technology. Throw it out, the legacy technology. Trash your obsoletisms, and leap into the new technology. You have to choose. You have no choice, but you have to evolve. You have to focus on consumer trust. Embrace the emerging technologies and adopt artificial intelligence, digitalizations, and analytics. Very important. Shift your competitive boundaries, and above all, focus on the sustainability by creating new climate-related products. I found in that earlier interview, go beyond your traditional mandates. Create holistic models for your information. And beware of cataclysmic events like pandemics, weather events, cyber risks, and terrorism. You have to embrace the environment, social, as well as the governance, as far as you are concerned, in your organizations. As a regulator, we too have to cope with the challenges. As such, we have to develop a strategic action plan from 2023 to 27. We are in the process and continuously doing gap analysis of core principles. We update our market conduct regulations and claim management procedures. It's very important. And we have given top priority to digitalization so that data and analysis that took days will be available in a matter of nanoseconds. So I would leave this last message with you, gentlemen. The industry goal should be to devise a customer-centric, digitally empowered insurance industry. And that, gentlemen and ladies here, is the answer to meet the challenges. I wish your deliberations tomorrow and day after every success. And thank you very much for giving me this patient hearing. Thank you. Okay. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Okay.
We say thank you very much to our guest of honor, and we invite our guest of honor to please remain on stage, because it's now time for us to present a token of appreciation to Mr. Razik Zarook, President's Council, for gracing our occasion with his presence. And so, to do the honors of presenting this token, I'd like to invite the Treasurer of the Insurance Association of Sri Lanka, Mrs. Nadika Opata. Please join us up, ma'am, as we will now be presenting a token to Mr. Razik Zarook, President's Council, who, as you all know, is the Chairman of the Insurance Regulatory Commission of Sri Lanka. We're deeply grateful that Mr. Razik Zarook, President's Council, has made time to be with us here today. And of course, we have a token of appreciation being presented to him. Let's put our hands together, ladies and gentlemen. The Chairman of the Insurance Regulatory Commission of Sri Lanka, Mr. Razik Zarook, President's Council.